There's a certain kind of energy people remember long after you leave the room. Not loud. Not beauty. Not status. Something deeper. You've probably felt it before, standing near someone who barely speaks, yet somehow controls the emotional atmosphere without trying. People listen differently around them. They lean in. They notice them. And the strange part is, that person usually isn't chasing attention at all. Most people spend their lives trying to become more attractive by adding things to themselves. More confidence. More charm. More validation. More proof that they matter. But the energy people truly feel, is often created by what you no longer need. And if you've ever felt invisible, emotionally replaceable, like no matter how much effort you give, people still overlook you, then this may be the realization you've been missing. Because people can sense the relationship you have with yourself. Even when you say nothing. Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And maybe that's why certain people disturb us so deeply. Not because of what they do, but because of the energy they carry effortlessly. An energy we secretly wish we had. Most people believe presence is performance. They think confidence is something you display outwardly. So they rehearse personalities. They monitor every text message. Every reaction. Every silence. They become actors in their own lives, terrified that if they stop performing, nobody will stay. But human beings are far more sensitive than they appear. People may not consciously understand your emotional state, but they feel it. They feel desperation hidden beneath confidence. They feel insecurity hiding behind humor. They feel approval seeking beneath kindness. And they also feel the opposite. They feel when someone is emotionally grounded. When someone no longer needs to force connection. When someone is comfortable being misunderstood. That kind of energy changes everything. Because the moment you stop begging life to confirm your worth, your presence becomes heavier. More real. More magnetic. Modern culture teaches the opposite. It teaches people to constantly broadcast themselves. To prove value through visibility. Followers. Attention. Social proof. Endless noise. But the more a person depends on external validation, the weaker their inner center becomes. And deep down, people can sense that instability. You can see it everywhere now. People terrified of silence. Terrified of being alone with their own minds. Terrified of disappearing from attention for even a moment. So they stay busy. Loud. Distracted. Not because they are powerful. But because stillness would force them to meet themselves. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "No price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." But ownership of the self is rare. Most people are shaped entirely by reaction. They become whatever gains approval fastest. And slowly, they lose contact with who they really are. That's why so many people feel emotionally exhausted even after receiving validation. Because validation can temporarily decorate insecurity, but it cannot heal it. Real presence is different. Presence begins when the performance ends. It begins when a person stops trying to manipulate perception and starts building inner solidity instead. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole. Not perfect. Whole. Which means facing the parts of yourself you usually hide. The insecurity. The envy. The fear of abandonment. The hunger to be chosen. Most people spend their entire lives running from these things. But the people who carry undeniable presence are usually the ones who stopped running. Because suppressed emotions don't disappear. They leak into your energy. A person who secretly fears rejection will unconsciously chase reassurance. A person who feels unworthy will over-explain themselves. A person afraid of abandonment will tolerate disrespect just to avoid being alone. And others feel this immediately. Not logically. Emotionally. That's why self-mastery is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming aware enough that your emotions no longer control your identity. The first shift begins here. You stop treating loneliness like proof that something is wrong with you. Most people cannot sit alone without feeling incomplete. The silence becomes unbearable. So they rush toward distractions, relationships, attention, anything that numbs the discomfort. But there's a strange transformation that happens when a person finally learns to sit with themselves honestly. At first, it feels empty. Then uncomfortable. Then terrifying. And eventually, peaceful. Because solitude reveals something modern life tries to hide: your worth cannot be built from other people's reactions. There's a moment many people experience late at night, staring at the ceiling in complete silence, where they realize they have spent years trying to become acceptable instead of becoming real. And that realization hurts. But it also begins freedom. Viktor Frankl once wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And many people spend years trying to change external circumstances while avoiding the deeper internal transformation waiting underneath. The second shift is emotional restraint. Not suppression. Restraint. There's power in not reacting instantly to everything you feel. Weakness is impulsive. Strength is observant. Most people reveal their emotional state immediately. They seek revenge immediately. Validation immediately. Attention immediately. They are constantly leaking emotional urgency into the world. But emotionally grounded people move differently. They pause. They observe. They do not need every misunderstanding corrected. They do not chase every person pulling away. They do not collapse every time life bruises their ego. And because of this, their energy feels calm. Heavy. Stable. Imagine a group conversation where everyone is competing for attention. Interrupting. Performing. Laughing too loudly. Trying desperately to matter. Then there's one person sitting quietly. Not insecure. Not withdrawn. Just a present. And somehow, everyone notices them anyway. Because calmness carries a kind of authority chaos never can. The third shift is detachment from outcome. This is where people become truly magnetic. Not because they stop caring completely, but because they stop attaching their identity to results. Most suffering comes from psychological dependency. I need this person to choose me. I need recognition to feel valuable. I need success to finally respect myself. But dependency creates fear. And fear always distorts energy. People can sense when your happiness depends on their response. And strangely, the less dependent you become, the more attractive your presence feels. Because now your attention becomes intentional instead of needy. You stop trying to convince people to see your worth. You simply embody it quietly. There's a certain sadness that appears when someone realizes they have spent years overextending themselves just to receive small fragments of love. Replying instantly. Overgiving. Over-explaining. Shape-shifting into whatever others preferred. Only to still feel unseen. And eventually a quiet question appears inside them. What if I stopped abandoning myself to keep other people comfortable? That question changes lives. Jung believed that what we resist internally gains power over us. Which means the more desperately you seek approval, the more approval controls you. But the moment you become emotionally self-sufficient, something shifts. You walk slower. Speak calmer. Need less. Observe more. And people feel it immediately. Not because you are trying to dominate them. But because inner stability is rare. Especially in a world addicted to emotional noise. The fourth shift is perhaps the deepest of all. You stop building an identity around being desired, and start building one around being whole. Because attraction without self-respect eventually becomes self-destruction. Many people are admired but internally empty. Loved but disconnected from themselves. Surrounded by attention yet unable to sit alone peacefully for 10 minutes. That is not power. Power is being deeply connected to yourself even when nobody is watching. Power is knowing who you are without needing constant confirmation. There's a moment in life when you begin understanding mortality differently. You realize time is disappearing quietly beneath everyday distractions. Years vanish. Faces change. Relationships fade. And suddenly the need to perform for everyone starts feeling absurd. Because eventually, everyone loses the audience. And all that remains is the relationship you built with yourself. That realization can either terrify a person, or awaken them. The people who awaken stop wasting energy chasing shallow validation. They become more selective with attention. More protective of peace. More honest about who they are. And ironically, this is usually when others begin noticing them the most. Not because they became someone new. But because they finally stopped betraying themselves. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And perhaps the strongest energy a human being can carry is the energy of inner direction. A person who knows who they are. A person who no longer negotiates their worth every time someone misunderstands them. A person who has faced their shadow, their loneliness, their insecurity, and still remains standing. That kind of person doesn't need to force presence. Presence radiates naturally from wholeness. And maybe that's the hidden truth behind all of this. People are not only reacting to your appearance, your words, or your achievements. They are reacting to your relationship with yourself. To the emotional atmosphere inside you. To whether you carry desperation, or peace. Because energy is not mystical. It's psychological truth made visible. And the people who change rooms when they enter them, are usually the people who spent years changing themselves in silence. So stop asking how to make people choose you. Ask instead. What would happen if I finally chose myself completely? Because the moment you stop chasing validation, you become harder to manipulate. The moment you stop fearing loneliness, your relationships become more genuine. And the moment you stop performing worth, people begin feeling it naturally. You don't chase. You become. You don't force. You embody. And once that shift happens internally, everything outside of you begins to change with it. If this spoke to something deep inside you, subscribe and share this video with someone who's learning to reclaim their inner power. And come back again, because some truths are not meant to entertain you. They are meant to transform you.